Hi everyone, my name is Dr. John Burt and I'm very pleased to be talking to you today. And thank you so much, Marco, for this invitation to speak at the State University of Campinas' annual colloquium on social circus. So hello from Woy Woy on the east coast of Australia. And I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm speaking today, the Darkinjung Aboriginal community. And the Darkinjung region is bound by the Pacific Ocean to the east, the Hawkesbury River to the south, and the Wataynikaneyap Mountains to the west, and the southern end of Lake Macquarie to the north on the eastern coastline of Australia. Home to a region with one of the highest densities of culturally significant sites in Australia and one of the largest Aboriginal communities in Australia. I acknowledge the sovereign rights of the Darkinjung as custodians of this country since time immemorial, and I would like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging in any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present today. So it's a great privilege to be part of this colloquium today, and thank you to Dr. Marco Antonio Bortoleto, Associate Professor at the University of Campinas and leader of the Circus Research Lab. Since 2006, the Circus Research Lab has been doing such great things, bringing together historians, educators, engineers, circus artists and psychologists to explore Brazilian circus and international circus. In particular, the development of informed and safe approaches to circus pedagogy, circus equipment technology, the use of play and games in circus teaching, and safety protocols and many other things. I also have the privilege of working with Marco on research exploring a key social circus company, Circus Lahito, and key figures in social circus in Brazil, including Manico Marica, and I'm learning about the rich history of social circus in Brazil. For example, Manico Marica's early history working to defend the rights of rural workers, indigenous people, and his work with Circo Lahito, working with young people. What's been so great about working with Marco is that he's been such an important link for us in our research for a chapter in a book about social circus projects around the world that I'm working on with Dr. Katie Laidley's editor of the Routledge Circus Studies Reader and author of Contemporary Circus, with myself and Louis Patrick LaRue. And we're writing this book on social circus with another fantastic social circus person, Manu Boshu, former head of Cirque du Monde at Cirque du Soleil. There's so little written in English about circus in South America, especially circus in Brazil. Through working with researchers like Marco, we're able to get an expert insight into the rich history of social circus in Brazil. For the book chapter, he's been setting up and leading interviews with key people in social circus in Brazil, like Manico, and then translating into English and discussing these interviews with us. It is giving us a fascinating insight into the approach to social circus at Circus Lahito within the context of a Brazilian perspective. We're also learning about the importance of social circus networks in Brazil, where things like social circus pedagogy are discussed and developed within a national context through organizations such as Circo do Mundo Brazilian Network. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my involvement in social circus, both from practice-based and research perspectives. Firstly, I'm going to talk about my practice-based background because my embodied practice as an artist and teacher directly informs my research and how I think about social circus as a researcher. So let me go back a little and talk a bit about how I became involved in circus in the first place. I trained initially in dance, in Western contemporary dance. I learned modern dance techniques like Graham and Cunningham technique. And I travelled from Australia and gained a place to study at the London Contemporary Dance School. And quite soon I was dancing in other people's companies and also co-running my own dance company in London. I was always interested in pushing the boundaries of dance and how dance choreography could work with other disciplines. I think this is one of the reasons I ended up co-directing a circus company, because circus is about one of the most multidisciplinary art forms you can find anywhere. There's movement on the ground, in the air, there's music, there's elements of theatre and characters, and there are different apparatuses and circus technology, which was always evolving. It was a logical step for me as a choreographer and dancer to be drawn to exploring the multidisciplinary dimensions that circus offered. Being a late starter in circus, that is, coming to circus after already embarking on a dance career, I had to learn a lot of things about circus the hard way, through self-learning, asking questions, getting injured, trial and error, but I really loved it. Around the time I was co-directing a circus company and circus school back in Australia, I started to do outreach work, teaching workshops in remote communities in outback Western Australia, with Aboriginal communities and also remote rural communities. Like many people who fall into social circus, I didn't really know there was this thing called social circus at the beginning. I was fortunate to be able to travel from Australia to Montreal to conduct my PhD into research pedagogy at the National Circus School. While I was there, I did the circus coaches course at the school, and it was during the social circus component of that course at the school that I began to understand more clearly what social circus was. During the course, I met Karine Lebois, the director of Cirque Piste in Montreal. She was one of Cirque du Monde's first social circus instructors, who then went on to be one of their key trainers. She said to me I should train with Cirque du Monde as they were just across the road from the school, and she told me of a long-running social circus project called Cirque Unique with young Inuit in the far north of Quebec. So I went and did the Cirque du Monde social circus instructor training, and there I met Manu Boshu, who was running the course at Cirque du Monde. From there, for the next 3 years, in addition to my PhD research at the National Circus School, I travelled up to Nunavut to work as a social circus instructor with young people in Inuit communities. Nunavut is a semi-autonomous region made up of 14 Inuit villages around Hudson Bay and Garva Bay in the subarctic and Arctic region of Quebec. Nunavut covers over 500 square kilometres and has a total population of only 11,000, of whom 91% are Inuit. 14 communities range in size from Kuujjuaq, the largest community with around 2,300 people, to Alpulak, the smallest with less than 200. There are no roads connecting the villages to each other. The only way to get around outside of the villages is by air, by skidoo in winter, by quad bike in summer. Non-perishable food and supplies come in by ship in the summer sea lift. Everything else can only come in by plane, which makes the price of food in the village stores much more expensive than for people in the rest of Quebec. Through my current research into social circus and my experience as a social circus instructor, I have learned that each social circus project is very different from another and is shaped by the community in which it takes place and the social, cultural, and political environment in that place. In Nunavut, the main issue for the government is to build programs that foster resilience in young people in the face of a lot of specific social and financial hardships that come with living in one of the world's most geographically isolated areas, while at the same time being saturated by online global culture like everywhere else. Nunavut is an area with one of the highest rates of youth suicides in the world, and the Nunavut government is combating this and other social issues young people face by investing in programs such as traditional canoe building, hunting skills, a hip-hop program, traditional crafts and music, and circus with the Cirque Unique program. The young people in Nunavut deal with social and cultural challenges every day. They have to negotiate multiple languages and traditions. Their parents mostly speak Inuktitut at home, while their Kalinat, that's the Inuktitut term for a non-Inuit person, while their Kalinat teachers, after year 4, only teach them in English. Another example is traditional activities like going out on the land and hunting whales and seals. These traditional ways of life are increasingly being affected by global warming. They are also, like all young people, subject to the complexities of global social media and culture through access to the internet through their mobile phones. The Cirque Unique program was originally set up by Cirque du Monde in Nunavut in 2002. The actual name Cirque Unique in itself reflects the diverse cultural influences that Inuit in the far north of Quebec have been exposed to, or more accurately, have had imposed on them. The name itself combines parts of the word for circus in English and French, combined with the Inuktitut word for the sun, Sikinik. Initially, 7 communities were identified to be part of the program. Instructors, all Kalinat, flew up from the south, from Montreal or Toronto, and out into the 7 selected communities. This was a challenging task for the instructors, many of whom had only recently received training and had little practical experience of either social circus instruction or working in the harsh conditions of the Arctic. This early social circus program ran from 2002 to 2007, but it didn't gain real traction with the young Inuit. Cirque du Monde recognized that the young Inuit only came to the program sporadically, and in order to make real connection, the program needed to change and evolve. After 5 years, it was decided that the model of drop-in workshops with different instructors coming up to the communities from the south of Canada to run the program was not working. At this point, in 2007, the program was wound up. In 2009, the Kutavik regional government initiated a new partnership with Cirque du Monde. The KRG took the lead, raised the necessary funds, and controlled the structure of the program, selecting and employing an Inuit program coordinator. And now, in 2022, the program is really thriving, with senior Inuit coaches forming their own independent Inuit circus group called Tupik Act, as well as continuing to coach in the Circuit program. Once the local community, in the form of the KRG, took over running the program, they stipulated 2 key focus areas: developing young Inuit in leadership roles with the eventual aim of the program becoming self-sustaining, and emphasizing that the new program must include aspects of traditional Inuit culture in the training program and in the shows and performances. Outcomes such as Tupik Act, created and run by participants of the Circuit program, is proof that the community itself, by taking ownership of the program, are the drivers of the program's success. So I'll talk a little bit about my personal experience as an instructor in Nunavut in the Circuit program. In the winter, fall, and summer, I would travel up from the south of Quebec to Nunavut by plane to work in different villages and in the summer camp. The trip from Montreal can take anywhere from a few hours to a few days, depending on whether you're held up by snowstorms. I would fly to Kuujjuaq, the main village, and then fly on by light plane to one of the 14 outlying villages. And the villages have names like Inukjuaq, which means the giant, and one of my favorites, which I still can't pronounce properly, Kanjiswaluak, meaning very large bay. One of the young people I taught there said the only way a southerner could get close to how the name should be pronounced is to say, "Can you swallow a truck?" In winter, flying over the landscape of pack ice and tundra, I was particularly struck by how incredibly beautiful, fragile, under attack from global warming, terrifying it all was, all at the same time. The weather in the communities can plummet to minus 50 degrees C in a matter of seconds. And in that kind of weather, everything freezes up, even your eyes if you don't wear goggles. Surprisingly, we can get quite warm for the few weeks of summer, in some places averaging around 10 degrees Celsius or more. And the fall is a stunning season where the mountain slopes are covered in 4 different kinds of edible berries. The northern lights can be seen on many nights of the year. In the classes, I would work with another instructor from the south and junior and senior instructors. We would welcome young people and establish the idea of a safe place, a fun place, a creative place. I think success in social circus teaching is defined through the relationships that are built up between instructors and students, the trust that develops. In social circus, when young people feel you're giving them a safe space in which to explore their physical, social, and creative potential, they start to trust you. When the young people arrived, we would do a little welcome ritual that helped each participant feel they were expected and to help integrate them into the group. We would start off with a warm-up. This gave us time to get a physical reading of the kids. Some might have been really withdrawn, disconnected from their bodies. Others might have been overly physical or not in control physically. We used humor to break the ice and loosen people up. The class would then progress from the warm-up to the games and onto juggling and more physically demanding things like pyramids, acrobats, and aerial work, in which the young people the challenge to go beyond their normal limitations to explore their physical potential. We tried to balance that with things like creating characters and using the imagination. I was always amazed how well the Inuit kids responded to clowning routines and how good they were at playing different characters. This might have been because of the rich tradition of storytelling in Inuit culture. As the workshops progressed over the weeks, we would start to guide and collaborate with the young people towards the performance. A performance is not necessarily a part of all social circus workshops, but it's a big part of the Circanique model. Themes for workshops and performances are suggested by the members of Circanique through online polling through a Facebook page. It could be colours, elements, superheroes, or a particular popular Inuit legend. And there are many of these. For example, the legend of the Turngat. These are spirits who, one participant told me, often hang out by the local store and have vertical slits for eyes and can drill a hole in a baby's head and suck out its brains. In one performance, we reenacted this, creating the figures of the Turngats, with performers up on stilts with wild long hair abducting a child on a hunting trip. The child was saved by a raven spirit, another character who danced in the aerial silks and then came down and swooped in on the Turngats and grabbed the baby back. At the end of each workshop, we would do a period of relaxation. I often used yoga breathing exercises. A favourite final game was a traditional Inuit clapping game with a complex vocal accompaniment, which goes round in a circle. It's incredibly complicated and people get eliminated if they make a mistake, leaving two people to battle it out at the end. The summer camp is an annual Circanique event held in June or July, where up to 60 kids come from the 14 outlying villages. It's usually held in the main village, Kuujjuaq. The young people are flown into Kuujjuaq. It's a logistical feat to get them all there. Some of the villages are really small and remote, and these villages are often only accessible by light aircraft for a lot of the year due to weather conditions. The young people all sleep in the high school gym for the 2 weeks. For young people who live in very isolated and remote communities, the summer camp is a really important thing because it's a chance for them to meet up, get to see each other, and to make what will be lifelong connections. About 12 to 15 instructors come up from Montreal, Toronto, and elsewhere. In recent years, costume makers, puppet makers, musicians, including rap specialists, have also been part of the team. After 2 weeks intensive round-the-clock workshops, a big production is created, which is performed in Kuujjuaq's fully equipped theatre. Some of the costumes are old show costumes donated by Cirque du Soleil and then modified and developed, often by workshop participants who want to work behind the scenes rather than perform. There's a pre-performance parade where the costume performers walk through town doing mini performances in the places where people gather, such as the store, the community centre, and the elders' home. The production gets bigger each year. I think one of the most important achievements is that a big group of Inuit young people from disparate communities can come together to create something inventive, complex, that is about themselves and their culture, that is multidisciplinary, that is both traditional and contemporary, that shows the rest of their community how amazing they are. Building pride, that's really one of the main objectives of the annual camp. That the young people come away from the experience feeling proud of what they have achieved, proud of themselves, proud of others in the show. The main thing I learned from working with Circanique as an instructor is that social circus lessons mirror life. Standing in a pyramid with others standing on your shoulders and legs is a physical skill, but it's also a life skill. Learning to trust others, showing how trust goes two ways. To trust others, you have to allow them to trust you. Many young people who have experienced physical or mental trauma don't trust themselves and don't trust others. Exercises like learning to stand in the pyramid help them to start to trust others. The use of play and games to teach social circus focuses on the process of learning rather than just the end result. It's not just about being good at something, it's about being good at being part of something, about developing connections, about being able to work with others to achieve goals. I witnessed firsthand the incredible effect of the Circuneat program on some of the young people. One young man was in jail for some time, and then he got into circus with Circuneat and became a junior instructor. He went on to become a senior instructor and then went on to run the local community centre. In this case, social circus functioned to develop him as a leader and to become a role model for other young Inuit. Programs like Circuneat, I feel, are so important because they provide something consistent that allows a safe space for young Inuits to experiment, to have fun, to be creative, to work together creatively. It develops a sense of belonging to a family of like-minded people who love circus, who happen to be Inuit. I've learned as much, perhaps more, from working with young Inuit people as they have from me. In a recent article by Katie Lavers, Manu Boshu, and myself called Circuneat, the Decolonizing of Social Circus in Nunavut for the journal Theatre, Dance and Performance Training, we set out to answer the question about why the program is now working so well. Our research is based on a grounded theory approach. That is, a research approach that involves the development of theory that is grounded in data, such as interviews with research participants, with the analysis and development of theories happening after the data has been collected and analysed. The interviews were with Inuit participants of the Circuneat program who've gone on to work as ensemble members of Tupik Act, a new independent Inuit circus company. Other interviews were with Inuit and non-Inuit program administrators, trainers, and instructors. We aim to get a nuanced and informed critical analysis of why the program has been successful. What our research pointed to is that the success of the Circuneat program has come about through the intervention of the Inuit community in Nunavut themselves. The local government, which is majority run by Inuit people, controls the finances and raises all the money for the program through applications for government grants and sponsorships. They actively communicate to instructors what the purpose of the program should be, and also what we as authors term a decolonization of the teaching practices of the non-Inuit instructors. This decolonization happened over several years, but essentially involved the Kalinut instructors being guided by the Inuit workshop coordinator, a position created by the Inuit who directed the program. The advice from her was to let go of their habitual teaching practices and start to listen to the Inuit young people, elders, and youth workers about how they wanted to be taught. The non-Inuit instructors who initiated the program have had to go through a process where they've had to rethink their teaching practices to change the way they teach through learning from the Inuit young people themselves. As researchers, through our research, we identified three key areas that the non-Inuit trainers pointed to as being instrumental to changes in their teaching practices as a result of their contact with the Inuit young people they've been teaching. One, what we call non-linear, non-hierarchical circles of learning. Two, an emphasis on peer mentoring. And three, developing extended relationships between instructors and trainees that go beyond what is taught at the circus workshops and extend to shared cultural exchanges outside of the workshop settings. Circles of learning have become particularly important in Circuneat. When seated in the circle, participants can discuss anything that anybody in the circle wants to talk about, including technical problems that may have come up in training or other personal things. These circles create an important place for communication. They become judgment-free spaces of trust and connection. This, of course, means instructors taught in a Western tradition, where there's a rigid division between instructor and student, have to put all that aside, because these circles of learning, where everyone gets to be heard, challenge the traditional Western hierarchy between teachers and learners. As one Kalinat instructor said, it's a complex role because it does blur the lines a little bit of just being an instructor. The setting up of circus stations, which participants rotate through, is an important part of social circus teaching around the world. This allows for participants, especially those training to be instructors, to start to work as peer mentors in the stations. This peer-to-peer connection and peer-to-peer teaching also plays an important role in the way Inuit like to learn. The circus stations offer a cyclical approach to learning, which Inuit educator and activist Verna Elasiak emphasizes is a vital element in traditional Inuit culture, rather than the linear approach to learning which characterizes Kalinat education. In Serkinik, the importance of a developed and extended relationship between the instructor and the trainee beyond the actual social circus workshop was made possible by retaining a core group of the same Kalinat instructors who return to teach in the program year after year. These instructors, some of whom have been teaching in the program for many years, build strong and enduring relationships with participants, which extend to getting involved in traditional activities outside of the social circus setting, such as hunting trips and eating together with the students and their families, and learning about Inuit culture firsthand. This idea of reciprocity, that relations between people should not be based on one side giving and the other receiving, but should be collaborative and open-ended, is an essential element of Inuit and many other Indigenous cultures. And it's this sense of exchange that is vital to the success of the Serkinik program. In our recent article, we argued that this process of structural and cultural decolonization of the social circus program and the personal decolonization of traditional Western modes of teaching social circus have contributed to the sustainability and success of Serkinik. So, returning to my current research on social circus, looking at different projects around the world, and the person who invited me here to talk today, Marco Bortoleto, I'm excited to be learning about the depth and breadth of social circus going on in Brazil today, and I'm very honoured to have been given this opportunity to speak today at the colloquium on social circus. Thank you.